announcements to ensure that we respect everybody's confidentiality. We will turn the recording off. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to our SECAC meeting. And I will turn this over to Chanel Bowman, who is going to give us an update from the Special Education Department.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sampson. Good evening, everyone. Happy spring. It has finally come. It feels definitely like summer today, unlike spring. But I did want to, the most important update I wanted to bring with you today is our decision-making process, just to make sure that our families and community members are aware of our process that we will be utilizing for our COVID-19 compensatory education recovery services. So that's the update that I want to share. Of course, we always acknowledge our Board of Education members for their support and leadership. And we definitely want to acknowledge Dr. Golson because she has definitely been steadfast and really stood firm and guided us through this whole navigation of COVID-19. So we definitely appreciate all of her leadership and vision to help us get our schools reopened, and students are definitely back in school. So we're happy about that. I did want to, on the next slide, I did want all of our families to know when the slides are shared with you. I know that Marcy usually sends them right after the board meeting. On the top of the screen, you'll notice that compensatory education recovery services overview available on the website does have underline, which means it's hyperlinked. If you click on that subtitle of this particular slide, it will bring you directly to the Department of Special Education website. And Marcy's going to scroll down. I wanted to show you exactly where the compensatory education recovery services overview is located, right, which is right under our vision statement. So if you click that link, it will take you to our voice over, which provides you an overview of our compensatory education services and how we are approaching those decisions in our district. It's about a 24-minute video, again, that gives you that overview and the step-by-step process. I am going to just go over a few points this evening that's part of that presentation, just to make you aware and to kind of share where we are as a district. So on the next slide, I just want our families to know that for our COVID-19 compensatory recovery services, we really are talking about addressing any regression or loss of skill that was experienced by our students due either to the lack of development or implementation of appropriate services during our mandated school closures that resulted in a loss of free and appropriate public education. So we know that for some students, because of the COVID-19 closure, there might have been IEP goals and objectives that were not addressed. There might have been services in which the IEP was amended. And again, as we looked at our individual students, we could have even had cases where a student was recommended because of a suspected disability, and it took us about 6 months to even test the students. So there's a variety of reasons why we have to really look at compensatory education recovery services as a result of, a loss of faith. From our perspective, we definitely recognize that it wasn't because of anything that we did. I mean, it was a national medical emergency, but we still follow the same process that we would if in fact there was something done on our part where we did not provide services. And so we're using that same process in terms of as it relates to the federal regulation. And we know that as students shift from instructional delivery methods, we have about 30% of our students that have returned to Prince George's County Public Schools and about 70% who have elected to stay online. So as our students shift back to either a hybrid or full face-to-face instruction, we begin to have those discussions, of course, with our IEP teams and our data review teams. We really are looking at those, again, the expected progress students would have made if COVID-19 had not come into play. So that's kind of the pretense in which we'll be looking at our students. On the next slide, we've given you a flow chart. And again, this flow chart is also part of the narrated presentation that's publicly available. But I just wanted to walk everyone kind of through the steps that we're utilizing in Prince George's County that speak to our decision-making process around compensatory education and recovery services. I first want to start by saying that from birth to 21, we have over 17,000 students that receive services in our district. And so in looking at, we have to look at every individual student in terms of thinking through this process. So it's not like we can only look at this group of students. All students will have to be reviewed. And we know because we're a large district, it's definitely going to take us a considerable amount of time to get through all of those meetings. As far as our Prince George's County process, the first thing we're doing is identifying data review team members. You'll see that noted in the first box. That is not an IEP team. It is a data review team, similar to a student instructional team or student support team. But the data review team are members of that team that have access to the different various student data platforms that we have in our district. That data review team will always be part of the student's review. The case manager will be part of that data review team and other key stakeholders that can contribute to the discussion and analyzation of the data. In the second box, you'll notice we're going to collect and gather data for every student that has an IEP or an IFSP. And we know that depending on the age of the student, the grade of the student, the data may shift. We know that one thing that's uniform across our school age students is that they all have grades and they all have progress reports as an example. When we're looking at students that are in birth to 3 or receiving services under our individualized family services plan, their data looks different. They don't receive grades as an example. And so we definitely have gathered a variety of lists for school teams to consider. We know that we have to have multiple confirming data, so we're not just using one source to determine educational impact. In the third box, the data review team will gather the data resources, complete a data review tool for every student. So every student in our district, when we're finished, all 17,000 of them will have a data review tool that will indicate and help determine if the student should be referred to the IEP team. So one of the things I think is important for you to know as parents and stakeholders is that we did get flexibility from the Maryland State Department of Education because, just looking statewide, they did offer us flexibility, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So again, the data review team will gather the data. They're going to complete a data review tool for each student. And then in the next box, which is the fourth box here, the data review team has two options at this point. As they're reviewing the data, they can either determine that there is, from the preliminary review of the data and analyzation of the data with the team, that there is lack of progress. And so they're going to refer to the IEP team. So the data review team, again, gathers the data. They take a look at it. Based on the review of the data, they're going to determine if the student has made progress or if the student has not made progress. If the student has not made progress, they are going to refer to the IEP team, which is here in this box. If the data review team reviews the data and determines the student has continued to make progress and that the student was not impacted because of COVID-19 school closure, what's going to happen next is that the child's IEP case manager or IFSP case manager will contact the parent or guardian to have a conversation. During the conversation, the case manager will share that based on the data review analyzation of all of the different data sources that were reviewed, that there was no educational impact and that compensatory education services are not recommended at this time. During the conversation, the case manager will check in with the parent as part of the conversation to see if the parent agrees with the data reviews team's analyzation of no impact, that the child has continued to make progress. And we know we have examples. I got an email today where we know that students have made tremendous progress, and parents are requesting that their child be allowed to even stay in distance learning even through next year. And we are, as a district, working on a virtual school option for students. So we do recognize that some students have made tremendous gains. However, if during that conversation, the parent or guardian does not agree with the data reviews team's analyzation and believes that there was impact, the case manager will acknowledge that with the parent and then refer the student to the IEP team. So you see here, if the parent disagrees with the decision that there is no educational impact, the case manager will refer the student to the IEP team. If the parent does agree, and this is where the flexibility comes in, the state will allow us to do a prior written notice to document, and that's very important. Although the data review team is not an IEP team, it's still important that we document no educational impact and that we provide appropriate notification to the parent. And so if that's the case, parent agrees. Again, as the parent has a right at any time to request an IEP meeting, even after the prior written notice is sent home. But if the parent is in agreement, the decision will be documented and then sent to the parent via a prior written notice. And that is flexibility because, as you recall, the data review team is not an IEP team. Although there are very similar, a lot of crossover between the data review team members and the IEP team, the state is allowing us flexibility to use the prior written notice to document the decision if there's no educational impact, so that the parent has a record of it and the school system has a record of it. The other thing that we're making sure case managers do is to make sure we have documented our points of contact with the parent should we not be able to reach them. We also have provided training that if parents, we're unable to reach them by email, by phone call, we will mail documentation to the parent. So the prior written notice, if there's no impact, would be then mailed to the parent if we're unsuccessful in reaching them by US mail. Once we get to the IEP team, the data review team will share the tool, the analyzation of what they've discovered and analyzed. They will schedule the IEP meeting with all the required participants. And again, those are your normal IEP team members that will always attend. The students have related services. Those will be part of the IEP team discussion. You as a parent or guardian will be part of that, as well as the case manager, and then the principal or the designee who serves as the IEP facilitator. The IEP team will then determine educational impact. If there is impact based on the further review, then there will be a discussion around the awarding of services that can look very different for individual students. And then we will document that decision made at the IEP meeting via the prior written notice, and then we will monitor the delivery of services. And typically when we award compensatory education, we have 1 year from the date of the award to make sure that the compensatory services are delivered. And so we would work with the parent, you know, if we're doing a tutor, it may be a summer program, it may be a Saturday program. It could be looking at social skills, it could be looking at academics, it could be looking at behavior support. So there's a variety of areas that we may look at when we're looking at the educational impact of our students. I'll pause there. I believe there was a question that went in the chat. The question was, what data are the teams relying on? Grades, other criteria. So there is tons of data the teams may be looking at. Definitely grades, definitely the progress for IEP goals and objectives. They may also be looking at our interim benchmark assessments. They may be looking at educational assessments if those were recently done. They may be looking at work samples or projects. So there's definitely a variety of sources, but part of our process and training will be that we've done so far with our teams is making sure that there is a tool that you as a parent once referred to the IEP team. So as part of your meeting notice, you will receive kind of a summary data analyzation so that you are prepared and know what the team analyzed and get a copy of that prior to your IEP meeting so you know exactly what was reviewed for your son or your daughter. On the next slide, we just wanted to provide key timelines so that you as parents understand that we're looking at our students, not just where they are now, but we're actually going back to determine what the progress was like before COVID closure. So we're going to be going back. We know March 13th was the last day our students were in school. So we're looking at where they were in that snapshot in time in March. We know that on April 14th, we had a modified instructional day. We recognize that when students left on March 13th, we were able to give many of our students homework packets. We know we provided resources on our website. However, we do recognize and acknowledge that we did not resume instruction in a modified schedule until April 14th. We know that on August 31st, we went through a full day of distance learning. And then on August 8th and August 15th, we began hybrid instruction. So they're definitely, as part of that data analyzation, they are looking at different points in time to determine progress or lack thereof. So I wanted to make sure as we think through the data and we think through possible educational impact, that it's very important that we look at these different time frames of time to determine if there was progress, if the student continued to make great progress or lack thereof, or even regression.
Hey, Trinell, I got a question.
Yes.
So this data review, 17,000 students.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tall task. So what methodology to try to get that accomplished is going to be used, and what are we looking at in terms of time frames of completion?
Right. So it may, in full transparency, and you'll hear this in the overview, it may take us well into a year. I think on the next slide, you can kind of see what we're doing to prioritize student groups, because we recognize that we cannot get through all 17,000 by June. It's not humanly possible. So we are prioritizing the group of children that are listed here that have returned to hybrid instruction. So definitely for all of our students, whether they're distance learning or hybrid, we have to focus on definitely our graduating seniors, our 12th graders, so that we can try to, for example, if they were not successful in a course, we can try to get them credit recovery this summer as part of their recovery plan. There might be transition services we have to look at. So we're definitely focusing on our 12th grade students. And then we're looking at those students who are in those transitional grades or ages. So students that are transitioning from the infants and toddler to preschool, preschool to elementary, elementary to middle, middle to high, looking at our students with the most significant disabilities, and then thinking through those students who missed services due to delayed initial evaluation. So that's thinking through that initial eligibility process. We definitely have leveraged our federal funding that has come through to be able to hold summer IEP meetings and data review meetings. So that did go into our ESSA grant request to be able to support summer meetings like we did last year. But again, we will continue this well into next year. On the next slide is just an implementation timeline. So if we have 17,000 students, we have about 3,600 staff members, 3,600. So when we think through the implementation timeline, just kind of on the next slide, Marcy, if you could advance the next slide, I think it's important for everyone to recognize that we returned to hybrid instruction on April 8th. April 7th, we met with our leadership team members, which is about 120 staff members from the Department of Special Education, to train them on the process. We met with our middle school and high school special education coordinators and chairs, trained them on the process on April 13th. April 20th, we just trained our early childhood principals and coordinators. And then we're moving on to other groups, regional principals, regional coordinators, infants and toddler staff, elementary staff. So I think it's important when you think about 17,000 students, there's 3,600 staff members that support those 17,000 students. And because of the commitment to instruction, we had to make sure that when we did our training, we had to use existing meeting structures to do that. We know that we have staff members that are currently on accommodations. We have staff members that are leave without pay. We do have vacancies. And so it was really important that we kept the instruction time sacred and we use our reoccurring meetings that we already had in place to do the training. So our first training started on April 7th, but we don't finish training until May 28th because we're training different groups of staff members. There's about 9 different trainings we will have as part of that process. I think Sarah, yes, asked was the LEAs for non-public schools training. Yes, they were trained on April 7th as part of our leadership team members.
And I got one more follow-up question for that. When we start talking about data review and compensatory services, and speaking more along the lines of the previous slide in which the timeline of review is going to be, which is our 12th grade students enrolled in 12th grade. How much does transition and job readiness programs that the seniors would normally get impact or play into compensatory services being determined? Because we know senior year, there's a lot of stuff going on, not just with our special education students, but also our general education students in terms of getting them ready to matriculate out if they're leaving the high school, high school and going on to either college or going on to the workforce or whatever, what are we looking at in terms of is those programs that were missed, like job training programs and stuff like that, factored into to compensatory services?
So I will say Peggy Basenko, who's our secondary supervisor, was part of our work group and has identified potential options for students that may fall into that category. But it is individualized, so it's not like we're saying all 12th graders, if you're in this category, this is what you get. It's really an individualized discussion based on the individual student. If that makes sense. So there's not a blanket, all kids get this. We have to look at it individualized by student. And so again, just a timeline, I know I'm gonna have to leave in just a moment to join another community member meeting with our county executive, but I did want to talk with you about compensatory services. I will put my email in the chat if there are other specific questions. I'm happy to address them with parents. I've been meeting with parents individually just to go again over the process. But I do want everyone to recognize that we're still in the midst of school-based training with our team. They have begun at the secondary level to hold those data review and IEP impact meetings. We definitely have the possibility of doing that as well over the summer, pending the approval of our federal grant. And then we will continue those meetings throughout the 2021-22 school year.
Okay.
So thanks so much, everyone. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If there are any specific questions related to compensatory education in our district, please feel free to reach out to me and we can schedule a follow-up call.
All right, all right. Does anybody else have any other questions real quick for Ms. Bowman before she departs us?
All right, have a good evening.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Bowman. We appreciate it. All right,
Bye-bye.
so now we're going to turn over our presentation portion of this meeting to our school team members, Jennifer Brown, Yvonne, I'm gonna say Yvonne A because I don't want to mess your last name up, Jessica Crum, Laura Sebald, and Debbie P. I don't want to mess her name up either, as they give us information on supporting our students with autism spectrum disorder, living autism spectrum disorder in PGCPS.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing us to present to SECAC this evening. It is certainly an honor, and we are glad to be here anytime we're asked, but especially in April for Autism Awareness Month. And we are very happy to share with you some of the resources and support we've been providing to our students, families, and the staff who work with them. As always, we are very, very grateful to Dr. Goldson's leadership and support of all we do in the Department of Special Education, as well as the support of our Board of Education. And this is your friendly reminder that we are recording our presentation this evening. So we want to share with you some new and exciting things that have been happening in the Department of Special Education and in the school district with regard to supporting students with autism. We want to talk specifically about support that's been provided in the virtual and now in the hybrid learning environment. And we want to share some really, really awesome resources that have been created by different members of our team to support students, staff, and families. So we provide the Department of Special Education, and more specifically in the K-12 office. On the autism team, we provide support across all of our learning environments, from early childhood through graduation. Not just support to students in the PGCPS autism program, but support to students out in the comprehensive schools and in our other specialized programs. We provide training to staff in the program and also staff across the district in general knowledge related to autism, and also specialized knowledge pertaining to special programs or special needs of students. So what does this support look like this past school year, when for the majority of the year we've not been in person in school, and most of us have not even been in person in the office full time for the majority of the year. We've been utilizing the same supports that I'm sure you have seen in your own homes as your children have accessed virtual learning, that the district has been very, very great about providing to all families and school staff. We've been on Zoom a lot. We've utilized Google Classroom, Bitmoji Classrooms, Google Meet, all types of technology to reach out and be able to assist with student needs and assist our staff, and to do just like we are this evening, reach out to families in the community. Additionally, a little bit more old school, there has also been support through manipulatives and materials. We did purchase materials for students. We made them available to those schools where the autism programs, as well as other special programs, CRI, regional other programs, are located, and the schools then took on the task of reaching out to families and arranging material pickup. Our materials were in to supplement the regular school materials and technology that the schools were providing to your students. We are really excited to bring to your attention, it's new as of this school year, we have new autism program locations, all at elementary schools. So we launched the programs at Allenwood, Ardmore, Cherokee Lane, Fort Washington Forest, Lake Arbor, and Scotchtown Hills Elementary Schools this year. What we are doing is redoing the elementary program boundaries in an effort to alleviate some of the numbers at our larger autism program schools. So, you know, the size of the programs varies from elementary school to elementary school, but some of our programs have just grown as we've been blessed with more and more students, and in an effort to keep those programs at an optimal size, we're opening these new locations and moving students over. Now, how we do this typically is by starting the programs at kindergarten. So all of these schools have just 1 or 2 classrooms this year with kindergarten students. And then they will grow each year as those students move up through the grades and they take in new students at those grade levels in the newly drawn boundaries. We've already had some introductions informally, but I'll go through again. I am Jennifer Brown, the instructional supervisor for special programs, which includes the autism program as well as the CRI and regional programs. With me this evening is Jessica Crum, autism specialist for elementary, Laura Sibbald, autism specialist for secondary ed, Debbie Perhatch, our twice exceptional autism resource teacher, Yvonne Aileen, instructional specialist for behavioral supports, also our first staff BCBA, and not with us this evening, but I did want to highlight the fact that we have our first autism program coordinator, Dr. Myrtle Ashcraft, who is supporting the autism program at Paint Branch Elementary. And as noted on the screen, you can see that our instructional specialist behavior supports and that program coordinator position are new this year. So we're really excited about that. A couple fun facts about our team members here. In addition to the new positions, Laura Sibbald recently at the PESI Autism Symposium had the opportunity to interview Temple Grandin, and quite a few of our team members were able to attend that conference and gain a lot of information and insight that is going to help our programs. And Yvonne Aileen is not new to Prince George's County. She's new in this specialist position, but she has been a part of our team via a grant. She was formerly with Ivy Mount, and she was working through a partnership through an MSDE grant supporting the autism programs at Barnaby Manor and Beltsville schools. We're also really excited to tell you that we have expanded the number of crisis intervention resource teachers at our elementary autism programs. We refer to those positions as CERTs. And we have 6 new CERTs serving the elementary autism programs. They are Christina Granville at Seat Pleasant and Scotchtown Hills, Shalana Johnson at Glendale and Ardmore, Jason Phillips serving Paint Branch and Cherokee Lane, Simone Richardson at Kenilworth and Lake Arbor, Kyra Terrell at Rosaryville and Allenwood, and Dr. Dieter Thomas at Suitland and Fort Washington Forest Elementary School. They all have 2 schools, but we've kind of paired them up so they have a larger school and one of our new smaller schools, and they split their time proportionately there. The focus, oh, and we did not forget our beloved Beltsville. They do have a cert coming, but that individual will start in August 2021. We also are anticipating having cert support moving forward through other program locations. The primary focus of the certs will be covered here on the next slide. So as we have had the opportunity and the district continues to support the services and needs of students with autism in the district, and has allowed us to add, grow our team and add positions in, we've been working on helping to define what these new positions do, because as we add new positions, we're able to kind of reorganize those responsibilities. I do want to say that this chart is a very flexible document that'll grow as new team members join and as we hire in for new positions. So for example, we just have one program coordinator right now. And at other schools where there's not a program coordinator, some of those responsibilities would be handled by the autism specialist or the instructional specialist for behavior, one of the other positions. But in general, you can see kind of the big rocks of responsibilities that fall for each of the positions.
Hello, everyone.
I'm sorry, I'm going to hand it over to Yvonne. She's going to talk a little bit more about the grant that we have with Ivy Mount.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the preventative initiative between Prince George's County Public Schools Department of Special Education and the Ivy Mount School began in August of 2018. I have to say that it's been such a wonderful experience working with the autism team and the teachers at the 2 schools that we partnered with. Currently, another BCBA from Ivy Mount School is continuing with the partnership. Unfortunately, the grant will be ending June of this year. The overall goal was to increase the capacity of 2 of our autism programs by having a full-time board certified behavior analyst support the school team with addressing the significant behavioral needs of students enrolled in the program. We had 4 main outcomes. The first was to avert non-public placement for 70% or more of our students in the autism program. As you can see, between May of 2019 and April of this year, the number has decreased from 3 students being referred to 0. Our second outcome was to provide a minimum of 2 observations with teacher feedback each year per classroom. We were able to accomplish an average of 4 formal observations using our autism look-fors for each of the classroom across the 2 schools. Our third outcome was to develop positive behavior intervention strategies and supports in conjunction with school personnel and our families to support all of the students that are referred to the autism program. These numbers that you see each year includes formal functional behavior assessments, behavior intervention plans, but it also includes informal behavior support plans that were developed for our students. Our fourth and final outcome was to provide targeted monthly training to support systemic change at the 2 schools. Trainings were provided to our teachers, our building administrators, our classroom support staff, as well as our families. Overall, it's been a very great partnership and we've had some really positive outcomes.
Thanks, Yvonne. So as you can see, the state is supporting the district in what we would call capacity building. We're looking, the purpose of the grant is to help us have an opportunity to utilize different resources and develop different programs. And they provide us, fiscally to be able to bring these services in while we determine the feasibility and effectiveness of them, and eventually build the capacity within our own district to provide these services. And as Yvonne has moved into her new district position, that is part of that capacity building. That is also the focus of the Department of Special Education's autism team. Most of our roles are largely consultative. We do spend some time in classrooms modeling interventions and showing teams how to implement our recommendations. But most of what we do is supporting the adults who support the students across the district. And our focus is to work on improving the knowledge, access to resources, and ability of the school team to be able to provide for the needs of all of the students within their program and within their school. And we're going to have a few other members of our team talk more specifically about how we've worked on building capacity. And Laura, I believe you're up.
Sorry, guys, I was muted and I couldn't quite figure it out. So here we go again. I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so I'm going to talk about building ability, that part of the building capacity. And as Jennifer just mentioned, we're really focusing on training, coaching, mentoring. So let's talk some numbers right now. So just this school year, 2021, we've done 13 district-wide trainings. And in just the period between August of 2020 to December of 2020, we managed to train 500 PGCPS staff members. So we've reached a lot of people with those trainings. And we've also done, like I said, we've done 13 district-wide trainings just this year alone on a variety of topics. So we started with our Autism kind of 101, Introduction to Autism, Best Practices for Autism program, which was really specifically geared towards training the staff members that are working within our programs. And now we're working on what we call kind of Autism 201 for January on during our Department of Special Education clinics, where we have a new topic monthly, where we're able to build skills and capacities of our teachers in areas such as executive functioning, data collection, social skills, communication. So those are just some of our target areas for staff training. As autism specialists and as other team members, we have done school-based trainings as well. And to date, we have completed 53 school-based trainings, like within the school itself, building capacities in whatever area that school may need. So it may be, I've done something specifically on pragmatic language, it may be something on communication, it may be something on data collection that's really geared towards that school team. We've also done it for whole school buildings or small school, like an 8th grade team or 5th grade team. So just depending on the needs of each school, we target it and work on building those capacities. We've done a variety of family and community training opportunities. Of course, you're here at one tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We've also partnered with the Family Support Center previously with different trainings in the fall. I was a member of the Parent Empowerment Conference, and I believe Yvonne was as well, for different resources to be shared out with families. So it's a really exciting opportunity. And most recently, we have done reach out to families of students who are transitioning between grade levels. So for example, providing parents information on what it means to transition from elementary school to middle school and then middle school to high school. So that is a very important element of our job. Our focus of training is not just willy-nilly what we feel like wanting to talk about, but it's rounded in the evidence. our evidence-based practices are based on the National Clearinghouse meta-analysis of best practices for autism. So when we're considering how are we implementing a training or what are we looking for our students, it is grounded in evidence. The last bullet point on there talks about our autism look-fors. And again, our look-fors are based on what the expectation is based on our evidence and our research and what we're training our teams to be doing. So all of those things line up so that we are consistently having the same message, we have the consistent follow-up, and that brings us to our next slide, which is focused on building accountability. So the first element of accountability is you have to have consistency, right? So as a team, we have a consistent message of what the expectations are, and that our expectations are that we are grounded in evidence-based practices, okay? We're grounded in data. It's very, very important to utilize that data effectively. So when we're building our accountability with our training, it's important to collaborate and have partnerships with school administrators. So we meet regularly with our principals and assistant principals within buildings and also coordinators where relevant. We collaborate with other stakeholders such as related service providers, school psychologists, and professional school counselors, because we recognize that we're not in a silo. We all collaborate and work together, and those partnerships are really critical to ensuring that our teams are held accountable and that there's follow through with all of the training that we're doing. We also are in the business of creating and implementing fidelity measures and checks with ongoing review with our stakeholders within the school buildings. So the look-fors I mentioned before, we don't keep those secret. We make sure that during our meetings with principals, our ongoing meetings with teams, we're looking at where are the areas that we need to grow and where are our strengths where we're really shining. So those are really important measures that we as autism team for K-12 that we're really geared towards. And I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Jessica.
All right, before you start, Jessica, does anybody have any questions on what they've seen so far? Anybody have any questions?
I'm actually going to stop sharing so I can access the resources real quick. So I'm just
Okay, all righty. I think there was a question that popped up in the chat. The question is, are 2E supports covered?
Yes, we do have 2E supports, and Debbie Perhatch is our expert in that. She's going to be presenting in just a few minutes. And Debbie, will you go ahead and speak to some of those when it's your turn?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if Jess is having maybe some audio problems, Jennifer, do you want me to go ahead and talk about?
I just wasn't muted, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so in keeping up with our building capacity in buildings, one of the things that we use our look-fors for is to see where our staff may be having some difficulty or issues planning. And so one of the things we like to do is build a set of resources for our teachers that they can use with our students with autism. And as you'll see here, we've been building resources on executive function, implementing visuals, alternative ways to demonstrate mastery, and school reopening social stories. I'm sorry, you guys going right through this. And these are one-pagers that we share with our staff, and it's another way to give explicit instruction to our staff on strategies to use with our students with autism. And that right there is a list of social stories that the team prepared during and before we returned to school in person. So they're both virtual learning and in-person learning and hybrid learning. So we were lucky that we actually were able to get our stories animated, and you're about to see that right now. So we like to make sure that sometimes we have a story that's appropriate for elementary students and a story that's more appropriate for secondary students. In all of our programs, sensory calming rooms have been provided to the elementary school autism programs, 2020-2021 school year. Some of the program sites are completed and some are pending, depending on the final equipment that they still need to receive to complete the room. It is, of course, the expectation that our staff is trained prior to using that sensory calming room. And that our focus is the calming room is used as a preventative measure intervention rather than a reactive measure. And it, of course, is utilized to work on self-regulation skills. And so in absence of our calming rooms, our team went ahead and built what we call virtual zones of regulation toolboxes. And so these are available for parents to use with their students at home. And as many of you may or may not know, but we like to use the zones of regulation as one measure to assist in our students in self-regulating. And when we're promoting our zones of regulation, no feeling is bad. We're really, like we said, trying to be more preventative or proactive and offering strategies of things or coping skills of things they can do when they're in each zone. So our next slide is we'd like to share the following resources with you as parents. I know some of these might have been shared last year, but we have updated a lot of our social stories, and you'll see some new social stories in there. But one of the topics that really was difficult for our students, or we anticipated being very difficult for our students, was them wearing a mask. And so you'll see that we've developed a social story all around wearing a mask. We also have our parent tip sheet, things that you can do in the home with your students. And again, this is our simple one-pager of strategies and ideas to use within your home. Keeping in mind all of the core deficits of autism. And I just showed you that virtual toolbox, the zones of regulation virtual toolbox. We also have a resource for zones in the home. And again, this is just a social story and ideas of things that the students can do when they're in a specific zone. And I remember that no zone is bad. We just want to make sure that they have those coping strategies and skills to be able to regulate themselves to get back to that green zone to be ready for learning.
And I believe we have Debbie Perhatch is going to unveil a brand new resource that we are sharing with you first, our SECAC attendees, and then we'll be sharing out with to all of our teachers to pass along to parents and families in all of our programs. And then Debbie will also speak a little bit about the 2E supports.
Sure. Hi, I'm Debbie. And Laura, did you want to click on the Family and Community Autism Awareness Classroom? We created this classroom as a resource for family and community members. In order to open the links, just click on the present mode of the slide. And then when you find objects, you can view the resources. This particular slide includes resources such as Amazing Things Happen, which is a short video produced by the National Autistic Society. We also have links for Prince George's County Special Education website, the Family Center website, and the One World Center for Autism website. So you can explore this page and find a variety of resources that we hope will be helpful to you. And I just wanted to take a few moments and describe a little bit of the things I do in my role as a twice exceptional resource teacher. One of the main goals, I think, of the TAG department in my area is the identification of students who are twice exceptional. We have a universal screening that sometimes finds these students, but we also work very closely with school teams to find students. We take parent initiations, and we just really want to find these students and make sure that they're getting the services that they need. And I also work very closely with the TAG program schools and work with teachers to provide resources and supports, you know, in cases where students need differentiation or they're having challenges. And in general, I create resources. I might attend SIT meetings or IEP meetings, and in general, just try to support in any way that I can.
Thanks, Debbie. All right, we're going to open it up for any questions that you have for our team about our presentation or any other related topics this evening.